Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. It is my great pleasure to welcome a brand new guest today on our show. Christine Desposito is a mentor, a doula, and facilitator with over 15 years of experience in birth work. She lives in Duluth, Minnesota. She's the director of programs at Birthing from Within. Birthing from Within was founded in 1998 by midwife Pam England, when she realized that something was missing from birth preparation in our culture. And while lots of organizations address parents' brains and bodies, few of them addressed the heart. And Birthing from Within works to fill that gap by providing parents with preparation for the deep psychological and emotional transformations of birth. Christine discovered Birthing from Within in 2003 at her first doula training, and it was the concept of honoring birth as a rite of passage and a transformational experience for everybody that really spoke to her. Christine has a passion for the intersection of birth and social justice, and that really has inspired her work. And today, Christine and I have really connected in the compatibility and the sort of synchronicities of each of our sort of areas of focus, the birth work and the postpartum work, and how so much of what Birthing from Within teaches in their programming is really synchronous with what we are sharing, and how we can sort of extend that window of time and not be looking at them separately, but as we support families, helping them to really recognize that this is a long window of time that's sacred, that is important to our future health and that of our children, and that when we're supported well, we're really setting everybody up for success, for parenting and living and partnering and all those good things. So Christine, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, so let's dive in and just really talk about, I would love to have you talk about Birthing from Within, its sort of concepts of how you teach birth work. And let's start with that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, as you said in the introduction, this idea that birth is a transformational experience for everyone involved. It is more than a physiological event. It is more than a medical event. It is more than a physical experience. It is, in many cases, a spiritual experience or journey. It is an emotional experience, a psychological journey for people involved, and the transformation of birth that is long lasting. It goes much further beyond the experience of being in labor or giving birth, or even this coined 3 months that we talk about postpartum, that the experience is much more elaborate and it changes people forever. People return from the place of birth and the experience of birth as maybe looking the same on the outside to the people that might be viewing them, but yet something is different within. And so this real understanding and honoring that this person, these people that have undergone a transformation, and this goes for birth partners as well. And it also goes for the birth workers, the people in the room, the nurses, the doulas, the midwives, the doctors, even, that there is a transformational experience for everybody involved, whether they realize it or not, that we want to hold that space for being possible, for being true.
I remember feeling this sort of surprise at, when I first became a parent. And I was maybe like 2 or 3 days postpartum, and I was sort of cocooned in my bedroom and looking out the window and seeing people walking their dogs and like just driving around and being like, how is it that everybody is just going about their day when like this is so magnificent, like birth has happened and I'm so different, yet everything is kind of moving on. And I really appreciate how you brought into it, the partners and the birth workers, the caregivers who are there, because as someone who's supported people in birth and postpartum, you can feel that magnitude, you can feel that sort of ethereal, subtle quality that indicates that something really, really important and magical has happened here. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that liminal space, right, that you're speaking of like kind of being in between worlds, being not yet really grounded in the world out there and still just kind of in this cocooning place, in this place of metamorphosis. And that's a perfect metaphor for how we might think of a new family, or even somebody gestating in pregnancy and preparing to give birth, that there is this green goo that happens inside of the chrysalis of the caterpillar, right? The caterpillar doesn't just grow wings and become a butterfly. They actually dissolve in the cocoon into a green goo and reformulate into something new. So we often use that metaphor in thinking about this in-between place where parents are. And when we as mentors can really see this person with new eyes, when we can welcome them back from their experience and allow them to be seen, be with their story, or just be present if they're in a place of no story still, because there is this transitional place that it may take a while to form the words even to capture what the experience is or was. So this is one of the ways that we as mentors are, we're preparing people to really be in this place with the families that they're working with, so that they can be held, so that they can be welcomed back into this new form of themselves, right? Who am I now is a common thing that is going to be a question for people after they give birth, at some point coming back to this new identity, this new sense of self that they are returning with and reformulating.
Right. And it's such a journey and it's so unique for every person. And I think there's so much to the being seen and being acknowledged for the transition that has just happened. That so often, I think, yes, we sort of experience it in multiple ways through birth and immediate postpartum, but that like individual transformation of like you, not just now we have a new person in the world, but like you as the vessel for this new person, what you have gone through is something that is forever changing you. And how does that, like, giving people some space and permission to sort of reevaluate what that means for them and who they feel like they are, and sort of accessing those sort of divine qualities of um, I think nature gives us so much guidance in terms of why we experience certain things, during pregnancy, birth and postpartum, that society can sort of tell us that those are negative, or tell us that those are things we want to avoid, or I hope I don't feel this, or I hope this doesn't happen. But nature has purpose for those experiences. And I think when we're able to help people see those as gifts rather than deficits, it can really pave the way for helping people to feel sacred in that transition. Yeah, recently I had read an article about, how the brain changes and how our skill set, during birth and pregnancy and postpartum is it shifts. And, what people might look at as, mom brain in this negative way is really like a superpower for helping to support bonding and sort of connecting with ourselves on this level that we haven't been able to access before, but nature's now given us that gift.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, there are so many wonderful metaphors to look at in nature, and really holding space for the complexity of all of it, right? That often this time gets painted, and pregnancy as well, as this, it's supposed to be this glowing, glorious experience. And, this expectation that you're going to meet your baby and fall in love with them right away, for example, or any number of things that are often messages that are told that people receive in different ways. And what's true is there's a nuance, there's a variety of experiences and feelings that people may have. And so really just being honest about what that might really be like, so that when or if people come to a place of feeling some of the more difficult or challenging emotions or parts of being a new parent, that they don't internalize that as they're doing it wrong, that that's not a message of, I'm not good enough, or I'm not strong enough, or any number of the things that we might tell ourselves, right? That instead we are creating space for expansive possibility, and that there's not one or right way to do this, that it can look a multitude of ways. And a big part of what we're doing with parents and birthing from within is really helping to build self-compassion, helping to create space for them to be imperfectly perfect, right? As we know that we all are, that imperfection is authentic. And so even with the template or the model of a mentor over a teacher, this model really includes the idea that we're co-learners. We're not the experts imparting knowledge. And when we're co-learners, it means that we don't actually need to know everything. I think that's one of the things, as especially new birth workers coming in, they may feel, and it's normal to feel like, I need to know enough. I need to know all of the things. And of course, there's certainly information that we need to know to be in this journey supporting people. And there's also a level of humanness that we can bring in by just not knowing. And parents are in the not knowing. People are, preparing for birth, are in the unknown. And it's uncomfortable. The unknown is not feeling, it doesn't feel familiar. It feels uncomfortable. And when we can also join in the not knowing, we can walk with people in this way that allows us to normalize that it's okay to not know. It's okay to not always get it right.
I really, really appreciate that, because that is a really common experience for postpartum caregivers as well. When we feel as though we have to have the answers that people need in every moment. And I find that it's so beautiful and offers even a deeper connection to be in that place with a person, and also caring for ourselves as a caregiver, knowing that my presence and I'm enough with what I'm bringing here. And we can find out answers if answers are what we need, but it's not my job to know it all. It's not my job to be the, eternal spring of answers. I'm here to give my presence, and I'm here to give my unconditional love and support. And that brings a whole different vibe to the whole field, to the whole situation. And I love what you were saying about, sort of, I can't remember how you put it, but sort of giving people permission and assurance that it's okay to not know. Like this, it's designed to be like a getting to know you phase. Maybe like all of parenting is a getting to know you phase. And I love that, and sort of working with like the playfulness of like, it's going to be a surprise. We'll see what happens. We'll see what tomorrow brings. Today is different than tomorrow will be. And that's okay. There's like a surrendering feeling to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And bringing our curiosity, right? Curiosity touches into playfulness, and bringing this element of, process over outcome. Like we can't always know what might be the outcome, but bringing our full presence to whatever's happening in the moment, right? And from moment to moment, being able to adapt or change or move with what's needed. That's so much a part of parenting. People can prepare in so many ways. They can take all the classes and read all of the books, and yet we know that there's still going to be a surprise in there for them. There's going to be something unexpected. And so when we can practice in small ways, offering opportunities for parents, whether it's prenatally or in postpartum, to step into that space of the unknown and to allow themselves to build confidence navigating through, finding their way through. This is often, a skill set that we're able to build and then apply to some of the bigger pieces in life that might have more consequences.
Yes, it's so true. It's like empowering people to know that they have the resources within them. They have the resilience within them to get through a difficult patch. And that's really the biggest gift, I think, that, we as caregivers during, any point during this transition can offer to people. And I really appreciate, you guys have, made a point to talk about the difference between mentoring and teaching. And we sort of, in our organization, also have explored the idea of, care partners rather than caregivers. But it's that understanding that I am as responsible for my health and well-being as the person who is here to help care for me. Like, we're in this together. And I think that's, the beauty and the empowerment in discovering, systems of care such as Ayurveda, where you realize that you have autonomy over your choices. Like, I feel this, and I know that I can do this to have a different experience that feels better. And that's amazing, and something we don't often feel when we're in this culture of, I need the professional to fix me, or I need, to go here in order to have a safe birth. I need to have this type of experience because there's no way I could, do it differently or, on my own. And it's interesting how, I remember in my birth doula training that, so many people, birth giving people would say, oh, I could never have done it without my doula, or I never could have done it without this or that. And it's like, no, you did it. Like, you actually did it. Like, we witnessed you and we held space for you and we supported you, but you are the one that did it. And that's such a subtle yet significant shift in messaging.
Yeah, absolutely. And this piece of walking with people, this piece of the personal choice, and this also tying into the mentor realm is coming with the belief that people hold their own solutions, that we aren't responsible for figuring things out for them, nor do we know what the best choices are for them, that we are there to first listen, to validate their experience and see them, hear them, meet them where they're at. And then the next step of knowing how to ask good questions, because even though somebody may hold their own solution, they may not be able to access it yet. And by listening, validating, and asking good questions, we are able to create a space of self-discovery where people are able to find their own solutions with our guidance. And I don't know if you've ever had the experience of somebody just trying to give you the answers versus coming to a solution on your own. But in most cases, when we're able to navigate and find our own way to our own solution, the change is more impactful. It's more long lasting. It's more meaningful than when somebody is just trying to deliver information to us. So that's another piece of the guidance of working with people, whether it's postpartum or any stage, really. And it could be even your children as they're grown, or your partner, because this type of model really works in any scenario. It doesn't just have to be in this realm of birthing or postpartum people.
It's so true. It's such a life skill.
Yes.
My husband taught middle schoolers for a long time. And at the beginning of the year, they would always, like, together talk about what they wanted the classroom to feel like and what would help you, and, what helps you learn best and what helps you feel open to learning better. And the kids would just come up with all of the sort of classroom rules. But I think about that and how, effective that was for children and certainly for parenting. in the different scenarios. But yeah, that is a subtle shift, and one that I don't know that many of us, I don't know that I experienced that from someone, as a young person. So that's almost like a skill set that I had to personally like deliberately practice and learn. And then you see, how subtle but powerful of a shift it is when you're working with someone, because they know the answers. They're in their body. They know what their body feels. They know their baby better than anybody else.
Mhm.
So they have the answers better than, somebody else on the outside would.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's that curiosity, right? Of like asking, like you're the example of asking the children, like, how do you learn best? What do you need in this classroom, right? We're just being curious, and curiosity is very validating. It's telling somebody like, I see you, I hear you, I'm interested in you, which often builds rapport. It builds trust when we can start from a place of curiosity and validating, that people are often more likely to create a trust and rapport, opening up to us in ways that, we're with people in very vulnerable spaces and very vulnerable times. And so having the relational piece of trust and feeling safe, feeling seen is going to be so important, especially during this time. And, even thinking about meeting with a new parent in these first days or weeks postpartum, just taking the time to listen, to sit with them. Sometimes, most of the time, it doesn't always look like a series of items to check off the box. And I know in my experience working with newer postpartum doulas, they may feel, and it's very normal to feel like you want to be physically doing something because that's when you feel useful, you feel most productive, or like you're really helping if you're doing a task. And yet, just sitting and listening with someone, it doesn't look like you're doing much. But in actuality, most of the time, it is exactly what people need in this very new, vulnerable space, is to share a little bit about their experience or their story, or just to be witnessed. I like to think about the kinds of questions that can help to guide new parents to noticing their own skill set of strength or resiliency or attributes that allowed them to get through. And just asking simple questions like, what surprised you in this experience? That's one of the ones that I always love to ask new parents, because if I'm working with them prenatally, we've talked a lot about the fact that, something will happen no matter how much time we spend together, no matter how many things I can tell you in that time. You'll probably come back and say, why didn't you tell me that? Why didn't you tell me that? Right?
Yeah.
Even if I think I've checked everything off the list. And that's because there's so many unknowns in this experience. And just simply asking, what surprised you in this experience can be such a rich space to explore. And then adding on, how did you get through that? How did you know what to do when you didn't know what to do? These are the kinds of questions that aren't yes or no answers. And it may take people a little while to think about these answers because they're not necessarily things others have asked. They maybe haven't thought about it. But when we create the space for them to kind of think about that and come to some meaning there, it's often a really rich learning for all of us.
Yes. And it takes people out of the sort of surface level of, the timeline of events, or like sort of I don't want to say mundane, but a little bit of like the really important stuff that we wouldn't normally access is found within questions like that. And yeah, it gives people the opportunity to like focus on a section rather than feeling like they have to give a play-by-play of, the whole thing. And I also was kind of like laughing because I think it's like such an appropriate question to ask like every day, like, what surprised you yesterday? Because
Yes.
there's always something that's like, oh, they slept for 5 hours straight. Like that was such a surprise, or like I wasn't expecting to feel like these really bad cramps today, or, whatever it may be. Um, giving people that opportunity is valuable beyond measure. And we've talked about that a lot with students of, I feel like I need to be doing something else, or we sat and talked for 2 hours. And I feel like it cannot be reiterated that how that person feels when you leave is more important than what are all the tasks that I got done.
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I just feel like, the skill set and the emphasis that's put on sort of the love language in a way of birthing from within, and the toolbox that we create is so inclusive of the soul of the whole experience. And when that is paid attention to and that is taken care of, the rest of the stuff is kind of easy, like we can learn the tasks, we can learn the process, we can learn the positions, we can learn the recipes, we can learn how to manage time, but to be able to sit and connect and help someone like unfold into this new place of being is what paves the way for everything else to heal and feel what we want it to feel. If that first piece isn't acknowledged or supported, no amount of good care is going to help or be as effective as we want it to be.
It's so true. We use a model in Birthing from Within called the 5 words framework. And the 5 words are validate, motivate, educate, initiate, and celebrate. And one of the things that's very common is we want to skip immediately to education. When somebody shares something, we want to help them solve their problem. We want to offer them great information to help, navigate what they might need to do next. And if people don't feel met where they're at and seen and heard, it doesn't matter how great of information we might have for them if they're not actually ready to receive it, if they're not ready to take it in. So beginning with validation, just, it sounds so simple, and so simple that it's often skipped right over because it's underestimated how powerful this piece is, but really just taking the time to, reflect back that whatever somebody's sharing, that it makes sense. Seeing their positive intention beyond whatever words they might be saying to what might be motivating them to choose something or avoid something else. And really noticing that once people feel heard and are seen, then they are usually ready to take the next step with us. And that might be, moving into this piece of motivation. It might be offering a skill set, a practice, whatever it is that we maybe want to do with them in the time that we have.
Yeah, I love that. I love the 5 words. I think it really it reminds me of our mother principles that we talk about: simplicity and flexibility, listening, compassion, intuition, grounding, non-judgment. But ultimately, like giving people a framework in order to offer good support. I think sometimes even caregivers, like we have really positive intentions, but it really matters, like you said, how we give effective care. First, we have to validate. First, we have to, establish like a set, comfort, help them feel motivated in order to learn something new that can help. And I want to also just say that, like, certainly for the postpartum window, I think pregnancy, I was like really eager to learn. I was like ready to like learn some skills, like figure out what I had to do. And it's tends to be um, a better time to like take in information and prepare. But the postpartum window, not so much. Like this is like a time where like giving a person a bunch of facts and information and education it's not the right time, So that's for us, like simplicity is so important of like, how can I break down? How can I find the simplest way to help a person feel better in this specific moment
Mhm.
is so applicable and so important.
Yes, absolutely. They are in that goo phase, right? And so it's
Oh,
very hard to, take in information and formulate ideas when you are literally kind of a puddle, in that time. And so, for us, we don't have a specific postpartum training in birthing from within, but we do a lot of how to prepare parents prenatally for the postpartum period, because that is a time when they may be able to take in more of that information. They may be able to do some of these practices and preparation and the initiatory experience that brings the learning from their brain into their body. So that when their brain does, like you were saying, there's changes that do occur. When those changes do occur in labor and postpartum, the information isn't as accessible. It's not as accessible. The thinking mind isn't as accessible, but it is the embodied learning, the knowing in their body, the knowing in their bones through their experiences that they can access more readily. So when we take the time to practice with parents prenatally, they are able to bring some of that into their body, which then can be accessed in that labor postpartum period.
that's so good. So good. You guys talk about, the heroic journey as part of your training. Can you explain what you mean by that?
So our training program is called Birth as a Heroic Journey. And the heroic journey is really a template, a map, a story, if you will, that's as old as stories are. It has been told for time and time over many different places all over the world. And this is a model that has been adopted to represent the experience, the internal experience of the birth and postpartum journey, or the childbearing year. You can think of that, and or the sacred window, right? So thinking about the phases of the heroic journey, there is the call, and we can make assumptions about what that might be for somebody, but we don't always know. We can't just assume that the call is just to get pregnant or have a baby. It could be many different things. But what it is a call to leave home, and home is the familiar. There's this place of moving towards the unknown, the unfamiliar, that people are on this journey in labor and moving towards birth and postpartum, that eventually they move into this place of the unfamiliar that is also called the underworld. And this is the upside down world, the place where the rules of the upper world don't exist in the same way. And often there is like a cracking open that happens in this place where perhaps what is often referred to as the one forbidden thing, that somebody may need to break a rule or do something that they didn't want to do or they wouldn't normally do in the upper world, but yet in this place of the underworld, it is something that they might have to do just to get through. And an example of that in labor could be for somebody that maybe had a lot of internal conditioning around being loud and noisy, and yet in labor they needed to vocalize very loudly in order to get through it. And on the outside, it might not seem like a big deal to us as birth workers that somebody was moaning through labor. It's very common. But for this person, it could have been a really big cracking open, something that they had to do that they didn't want to do or didn't think they'd have to do, right? And we can apply that same principle to postpartum or really any phase of life. But that there is a not knowing that happens here. And this is the place of the eventually moving into the chrysalis and the green goo, right? Where there's this reformulation that needs to happen. And just like there's a call to move from the familiar into the unfamiliar, there's also a call to come back up into the upper world. And this is the place of integration. It is the place of coming back to who am I now? And bringing whatever gift, so to speak, they may have received from this transformational experience in the underworld, now back with them into their upper world life, their life of the familiar. And again, when they come back into that space, you know, they may look like the same person on the outside, and yet there's been this deep transformation that's occurred. So when we as people that walk with those through this journey, when we're able to understand the map of the heroic journey, when we're able to really understand that, you know, what they've gone through is more than a physical or a physiological event, it is really a deep transformational experience, then we are better able to welcome them back. We're better able to meet them and say, you know, like, I see you, welcome. And just meet them in this new place of reformulating and integrating. And there's, you know, several other pieces, and for time's sake, I won't move into every single phase and piece of the heroic journey, but there's, you know, an additional place is meeting the allies, right? Meeting the people that are there along the way to offer you support or give you a message that you needed to hear or whatever it might be. And so that's, you know, a big part of where our wise mentors come in, where the people come in that are offering support, is that we are able to see this bigger model, this experience that people are undergoing, and tap into what might be the specific medicine that they need to help them find their way back to who am I now, or to support them on that journey.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much. Yeah, I've always been so drawn to storytelling in general as a way to heal and find oneself again, and looking at it in that way is so powerful. I'm so glad you're doing the work that you're doing, Christine. Thank you so much for sharing about it. So I'm going to put all the information our listeners need in the notes so they can find out more about Birthing from Within's programming, find out more about you and how to contact you. But this has been such a lovely time spent together, and I'm so grateful to have connected with you and to share this work together in the ways that we do. And so please look out for more on, you know, one another's blogs. We're going to put some information that you can sort of learn more if you're coming at it from the postpartum perspective or coming at it from the birth perspective. It'll help really further the alignment of our work together. But Christine, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to learn more about your organization as well, and to learn about how we can collaborate, as there's so many crossovers. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Be well, everyone, and we'll see you in the next episode.